Hi everyone, bienvenidos. Welcome to my first episode of Charlemos Juntas. I am your host, Amy Villarreal. I have a very special guest today who is also a very good friend of mine, Noemi.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Mimi, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So as y'all know, this is my very first podcast. So this is actually try number 2 of recording the episode, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm still learning, and this is. Have you ever been on a podcast before?
I've never been on a podcast before.
Okay.
So this is also my first, go around at it.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about Mimi's struggles as a Latina and the experiences she's had with racism, but also we're going to talk about her decision to continue her education. Mimi, do you want to start with your struggles as a Latina, any times that you've experienced racism, and about what age you were whenever you started noticing that like somebody was treating you differently because you were Latina, or the moments where you felt like that was what was setting you apart?
Okay, yeah. So I would say that I really didn't notice any different treatment until I was a little bit older. So I was probably in late middle school, early high school when I really started to notice that race was a thing, in terms of the way that I was being treated and opportunities that I was given. There was one specific moment that I can recall, and I want to say that I was in early high school, but I could have been also in late middle school. I can't really remember. But there was this girl in my class, and back then, you would get some kind of report card or something with class rankings. And she was just absolutely baffled that I was very close to the top 10. I was number 11. I never made the top 10.
Oh.
But, I was always right there.
Yeah.
But I felt a little discouraged because she was just how are you number 11 and I'm number 13? I don't know. She was somewhere really close to me, but not quite where I was, and not in the top 10. But she always wanted to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
But she was just kind of baffled that I was there, because why? Why would I be smarter than her? And she never said anything racist or anything, but it was just these undertones that I could feel that's why.
Yeah.
Because other than that, what would set us apart? We were both girls in the same grade. There was no reason that I should have not been further up than her.
Yeah.
We were even except for the color of our skin. So.
Yeah. So you felt like she was trying to insinuate, well, I should be above you. Or I should be in your position. How is it possible that you're smarter than me?
Right, exactly.
When you had given her no reason to even think that.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. And it was just a really weird thing. And then, I don't know, she went off with her little friends. And I mean, when you're younger, you just don't really think about things like that. Maybe she didn't even really realize what she was saying, or how it was coming across, because that thought probably didn't cross her mind because she was a Caucasian girl, and they just don't think about things like that. I don't know. They just don't.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I had a similar experience in middle school, and it just makes you kind of feel I don't know, it makes you feel out of place. It's whenever you start feeling out of place, after your first experience like that, where someone's well, why do you get to be here, or why are you here at all? And it's just well, for the same reasons that you're here,
right.
Or for the
somehow you're less deserving.
Yeah.
And then I would say over the years, I'm sure that I've had other experiences, but another one that I can recall as an adult is I had moved to Colorado for a bit, that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go, obviously I'm in a whole nother state, and I'm living in a little mountain town, and I went out to go look for a job. And there was this big like posting. I couldn't even tell you the location of this place or what it was. Like, was it a restaurant? Was it a hotel? I really don't know. But I do remember the way that I felt about it when I walked in. I had walked in, saw the now hiring. I was ready to fill out an application. And then the lady was like, we're not hiring. And like all I had done was ask for an application, and she was just like immediately like, we're not hiring. And I was like, okay, like I don't think that I really said much, but I was just like kind of taken aback because there was a huge now hiring sign, and it was just the way that she like immediately cut me off. Like, no, absolutely not. Like, we're not hiring, or like, are you not hiring me? Yeah, it was a very strange experience. And like, I don't know, I had come from Corpus Christi.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of Latin people in Corpus Christi. So to move up to a town that is just like a lot of white people, it was very, I don't know, eye-opening, I guess you would say.
Yeah, the first time that you lived somewhere where you felt kind of isolated.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like she was just being very racist at that point. But then there was other experiences where people aren't necessarily like being racist to you, but you feel out of place. Like back into this little town in Colorado, there was this one place that me and Jordan really liked, and it's called the Hungry Bear. Great place, by the way. You should check it out if you're there. There's nothing against the place, but it's just like I walked in and I would look around and I would see nobody that was like the same color skin as me. And even Jordan, like, I mean, if you know Jordan, you know that he's mixed, and so he doesn't look like completely white. He's got a little bit of color to him, but even he felt weird. And out of place, like just looking around the restaurant, we were like, oh my God, we're like the only people that are like a skin color here that's not white. It was very strange, and everybody was very nice, but it was just like a weird feeling personally.
Yeah.
I would say that I definitely always felt weird at the restaurant. Going to the store, it was always just like so much more of a chore than I didn't really have time to think about anything else.
Yeah,
So I was just kind of there. I would definitely say that I felt better when we left. So where we lived was maybe 20 minutes up the mountain. So if you went 20 minutes down the mountain, you were in Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is like very diverse. So anytime we went there, I actually felt really comfortable. Like those kind of thoughts never crossed my mind. Just because there was more people that looked like me out and about. But always going back up to the little mountain town, it was always really weird at the restaurant. Occasionally like I said, I didn't really think about it too much at the grocery store. But I mean, if I really like sat there and thought about it, it would feel kind of weird. I worked at a nursing home up there, and I would say that a lot of the clients, the people that lived there, they were also very white. And sometimes if I'm thinking, now that I'm thinking about it, now that you have me on a roll, I would feel like sometimes like oh my God, what am I trying to say? The family of the residents that lived there would maybe look at me kind of weird, and not in a like, I don't know, not in like a bad way. I'm still taking care of like their parents or their grandparents or whatnot, but sometimes it felt like they would maybe pick the white person to like more, like they would talk to them more, and that could just be like a personality thing, but sometimes it did feel a little bit like, oh, why? Like
you felt like they were actively choosing to speak to the other employees that were not of color over speaking to you.
Right. And when in fact, sometimes I would just know a lot more about the resident than the other person, but they wouldn't know that until they started talking to them. And then eventually they would have to come to me.
Yeah. Let's talk about, your career and how you decided to go back to school, but this isn't the first time that you decided, hey, it's time to do the thing. To do the thing. You've always known that it's something that you wanted, but let's talk about how it was difficult for you to, start going and it being consistent, and, it wasn't just because you were like, whatever, there were other factors at play that kept you from continuing. And so kind of let's dive into how you got to your decision, like to finally come back and every obstacle that you went through to get to this point?
Right. So I would say that, I mean, I guess we could take it way back to like high school. So in high school, obviously they push you to find a college to go to. What are you going to do when you grow up? Blah, 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 blah. And back then I thought I was going to be a journalist. um, and I was dead set on that. I had found a university that I really liked that I wanted to go to. I applied, I got in. Around the time that I was about halfway through my high school year, senior year, is when like things kind of shifted in my personal life. So I ended up going to a new school. I was kind of living in a different situation than I was before. And I decided that that dream was like out the door. I'm not going to do that anymore. That's not what I want to do anymore. Even though I kind of did, but I was also just being a little bit rebellious. And I was like, I'm not going to, I'm not going to do that because that's what they want me to do.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, well, let's do something else. Let's take a year off, figure out if you even really want to be a journalist and go from there. So I ended up taking a year off. I decided about halfway through that year off that I was taking that I was going to instead do community college. And at that time I was in San Angelo, so I believe it was like Howard College or something. I forget what it's called. I did everything, the application, got in, blah, blah, blah. Whenever it was approaching time for classes to start, I think I had even signed up for classes and everything. When it was approaching time for classes to start, I wrecked my car.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? I wrecked my car and it was absolutely totaled. I of course, only I would just ram right into the back of an old pickup truck. You know, those things are like sturdy as yeah.
Indestructible.
Yeah. He had like the tiniest little dent and I pushed him a little forward, which flashed before my eyes, like my life and his life. I was like, did I kill this man? It was like, that was the scariest thought I've ever had. And it all happened so fast. And then I was like, am I dreaming? But anyways, that happened. And I knew then, like, not at that instant, I wasn't thinking about school in that instant, but like in the weeks that followed, I knew that I was not going to be able to stay in San Angelo and go to school. If I stayed in San Angelo, I was just going to have to keep working, and not go to school for at least another year. And I thought that's not an option. So then I moved back home. And at the time, my family was in Corpus Christi. So then I went to Corpus Christi. My sister had already graduated from high school at that point. So we both signed up to go to community college. The plan was to do our basics and then move forward somewhere. I don't know where. We got into college, signed up for classes. We would go to class, but we would fall asleep in the car. We signed up for early classes, but we had to go, you know, because our parents were home. They were like, what are you doing? Go to school.
Yeah.
So we would go to school and we decided that we were not going to go inside. We just wanted to chill. So we would chill in the car.
Oh my
And then we would go
goodness.
home like we went to school.
Oh my goodness.
So that kind of like messed things up for me because also coming from like a Hispanic family and parents who hadn't really done the whole college thing, they didn't tell me because they didn't know about drops, about like things like that. So I went to class, failed, didn't drop, and I just lost my financial aid because at that point my GPA was like probably 0.6 or something. I don't know, something crazy.
And so when you say drop, like you just stopped going.
Yeah. So when you go to school, you sign up for a class, and if you don't like technically drop it or withdraw, then you fail the class. If the teacher does not withdraw you and you do not withdraw yourself, you fail. Okay. And if you fail, that affects your GPA. Mm-hmm. Also, too many drops also affects you, but it's kind of like less worse if you just have dropped versus failed, because now your GPA is suffering versus like, oh, let me just redo it again next semester.
Yeah, and then when you drop, you also are able to stop financial aid from coming in, they'll
You just pay back what you owed for at that point.
Yeah, and so if you fail to properly drop out of your courses, there's no way for financial aid to have known that you're not even going. But let's be honest, they don't care if you're not going. They're like, hey, you signed up for this class.
Right.
I'm not showing that you dropped it, so I'm assuming that you're just not doing the coursework. It doesn't matter. You still have to pay for this class.
Yeah, of course.
And then you've got to pay us back eventually.
So that's kind of like a spot I was in. And at the time, like, I was young. I really wasn't making a lot of money. I was still living at home. So basically, I was just making money, like, for myself, but also trying to save up to move into a place of my own. So after that whole thing happened, I want to say that I attempted maybe one more semester. But at that point, I had already met Jordan. Me and Sassy were living together. I think Sassy's boyfriend had moved in. And then shortly after, life just happens. We decided to split, go our own ways. So like me and Jordan went one way, Sassy and Jacob went another way. So then at that point, I was just trying to make a living to just sustain myself. And then about that point is when Jordan's mom, who is the nurse, suggested that we try to be CNAs. And you take, you do the class. You can go to college to do that, but also she worked at a nursing home that offered the course for you. You would just have to work with them for a year to pay off the cost. So we did that. And it was okay at first. I mean, it was a job, and it was more money than I had been making at the time, but it just wasn't something that was for me. Like I knew almost immediately once we actually started working and got out of the classes, that it wasn't going to be for me. It's very like physically demanding. It's emotionally draining. You just take care of people, and then when you get very attached, like they pass away, and it's just over and over and over again. I'm not built for that. I'm soft. And so also like I'm not good with like, I don't know, blood and like fluids and shots and medication. Like taking care of somebody is a lot of work. And it's just, if you make one wrong move, like that could be it for them. So that kind of responsibility was never something that I wanted to take on. So after we moved to Colorado, I told myself I wasn't going to do that anymore. I ended up doing it probably because I had such a bad experience looking for jobs. Jordan's mom had started working, and she got us in. So we did that for a little bit, and then that's about the time that you wanted to move to Austin, you and Erica, and I was like, yes, we're in. So we moved out here, and I don't know, I can't recall. Did I try to go to school, or was I just trying to like figure things out?
I think you were trying to get settled first, because we had to look for a job, and
neither of us had lived here before, so
no, and we still had that pressure of, okay, we're here, but now we
all need a job.
Find a job.
There's 4 of us that need a job.
Yeah, it was so difficult. At first, we're just kind of like, okay, well, who's gonna go get a job?
I found a job like in 3 days.
Yeah, you did. It took me months, but that's a story for another day.
So no, right? When we were living together, I had never even like considered that.
I think you talked about future plans, like you knew, like eventually I want to enroll in classes, and so I think you were probably just trying to find the right moment, trying to save up, because
I had to pay for them at that point. So maybe, I guess it was after we had already moved out, that I decided that I can't even pinpoint like when that happened, but I want to say maybe it was like in 2019 is when I decided to go back to school. It definitely had to be around 2019, because then in 2020 COVID happened. And I remember I had only been in classes for like the year before, and even then I was like a really terrible student. I was just, I don't know, I'm a very anxious person, and I think that at that point in my life it was just kind of taking over everything that I did. As far as like relationships, especially like talking to people that I haven't known for my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really hard for me. And then COVID happened, and that made like my social anxiety just so much worse because then I wasn't seeing anybody or talking to anybody except,
Yeah.
over text or like the occasional like phone call.
Yeah.
So that happened. And then I think more towards the end, like when COVID was like, it was starting to go away, we could get back to normal life a little bit, is when I signed up for online classes. Did that, barely passed. And then I went back to school like full time when they reopened all the campuses.
Okay.
And then I did okay. I think I did okay then, but I was also still like struggling socially, like just going out and talking to people and having to see the same people all the time. And with school, it's just like, it's kind of hard because I'm such like an introverted person that you have to share your ideas, and that's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Like I like to just live in my own little head
Yeah.
and not talk to other people about what goes on in here. But you have to, and that's the only way that you grow, and that's the only way that you make things happen is just by talking to other people. So right now I would say that I am at a pretty good point. I've already made all of the mistakes, and I've trying not to do that again.
Yeah.
Now I'm taking full-time classes because honestly, I'm 30 and there's no time limit on, when you want to go to school. I could finish school, decide I want to go back for something else in 20 years from
Yeah.
now. But I'm just kind of tired of school.
Yeah.
I've been trying to do it off and on for years now, and I want to just finish one thing and then we'll see what happens next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that's been like my journey. And right now, I'm in a good spot and I'm excited to finish hopefully in the next year and a half if I do everything right. But yeah, hopefully we finish that soon. And I think maybe if I decide to go back to school for like another 4 years or so, or 2 more years after that, then it'll be okay. But right now I think I just want to get like my associate's degree and get some like real world experience.
Yeah.
That's always the hard thing about going to school is you have all this like education, but you don't have like hands-on experience. So excited about that.
Yeah, that's exciting, and it's different. So, thinking about like the degree that you're working on and the representation of Latina women in this field. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I would say that, now in 2024, there is definitely a lot more like Latina representation. But growing up, there was a lot of times where I didn't see somebody like on the screen that looked like me, or back then I wasn't really like researching directors and stuff like that. But I could imagine that there was just a lack of space for women, and especially Latina women. Now it's a big thing where like people are paving the way for Latina women. They are making specific roles or hiring specific people just for this job. And I think that is a really good thing because even now, sometimes you don't get the equal opportunity. Like we talked about, like we don't get the same opportunities as other people just because of like the color of our skin sometimes.
Yeah.
And they might not realize that they're not, it might be like a bias thing, like that they're not realizing that they're doing it, that they're not hiring these people, but they're not doing it.
Yeah.
And now they are. And I feel like it's getting better. Even for like other ethnic groups, it's getting a lot better. So
yeah, well, that's good because we struggle, especially like if you're applying to a job. The truth is that you're running the risk of them throwing out your application just because of your Hispanic name or because you're a woman. Like, they're not allowed to ask about those things. You're not going to put on your resume female,
Right.
female Latina. You're not, and they're not supposed to ask those things, but
they just read the name.
read the
and they know.
name. Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes they just discard your application.
Yeah, and it's so difficult to get past that initial step, and it's you know I'd assume it's more difficult in your field, in a field like yours, where it's just been mainly white males in the
Yes.
field, and now you know 21st century 2024, you're finally seeing some representation. So does that does it still kind of make you nervous thinking about, oh, I'm going to start applying, I'm going to start finding jobs? Because in the film industry, it's contract work, right? So
Yes.
it's not salary, it's more risky.
Yeah.
And
There's no like I mean, there are job opportunities out there that are set or whatnot, but like you said, it is like a lot of gig work.
mm-hmm,
And there it does make me worry sometimes, just because as a woman in general, it's hard in the industry,
mm-hmm.
but also it is a little bit easier for white women than it is for like Latino women or other
Yeah.
ethnic women.
Yeah.
So even now, if you were to like watch, the Oscars and stuff like that, like a lot of like the female directors are white women.
Mm-hmm.
So it does definitely still, I don't know, make me kind of nervous.
Yeah, yeah, because you know that it's headed in the right direction,
Right.
but
It's just taking some
we're
time.
not there yet.
Yes.
And so that is something that you have to worry about, on top of showing what you're even capable of doing, work wise, so you have to get through that initial step in, okay, I've got to get hired first, because otherwise, how do I show them what I'm capable of?
Right. And that goes back to our discussion about like opportunity, just even getting the opportunity to show what you're made
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
ever felt like that before? Like it was harder for you than it was for somebody else in your career?
In my career, there were times where I felt kind of singled out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So my career has been in banking mostly, and it's very competitive, but yeah, the think of the CEOs and the presidents of these banks. They're not usually women, and if they are women, they're not usually Latina women.
Oh yeah.
And so recently I did change my whole career outlook. I'm done with banking, but it was a huge passion of mine for years, and like I loved it, and like I was like, this is what I want to do, and I want to get to the top. But the experiences that I had trying to work my way up, it knocked me down. It did. And it's because I had to prove myself twice as much as any other person. And I had to like say, hey, like, I'm going to prove to you that I can do this job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to prove to you that I can do it twice as good. And I want, at the end of the day, I know who's in charge, and I know who I have to prove myself to, and I want them to see what I'm capable of. And that's always been my mindset. But I just felt like I wasn't as praised as the white male employees at any of these banks that I worked at that held, about the same level of position that I did. And even then, sometimes I'd see them praise someone who was below me, not in comparison to myself, but like, I held,
Yeah.
I held a higher position towards the end. And I started to notice that, like, I had to fight for the female employees to have the same opportunities, because there were times where I'd see, I mean, they were Latina women, they were white women, but they were not being appreciated as much as any male employee, no matter, sometimes it was no matter the color of the skin, it was because we were women. And I mean, in my position, I had like started seeing women leave and just kind of like, look, Amy, I can't do this anymore. I'm not being treated the way that I'd like to be treated. I'm not being given the opportunity to show what I'm capable of, because I had employees who would apply to jobs that within the same company that would move them up and they would make a little bit more money, and they weren't given that opportunity. And it still baffles me. I'm like, they already work for this company.
Right. They're not an outsider.
Exactly. But they'd rather hire an outsider sometimes, and it's like, why?
Right.
And so that was a big struggle for me, is like, as a woman, and then on top of that as a Latina woman, I had to work twice as hard to maybe get an ounce of appreciation. And you know, and at a lot of these employment places, at a lot of these companies, you're supposedly not allowed to talk about your salaries, the money that you make. And they do that so that you don't finally figure out the huge wage gaps. And so I didn't have to be told, but I know that I wasn't making as much as other employees that held, about the same level of position as me. And I've always been one to work my off in anything that I did, especially when it came to that, to banking. I loved it so much that it wasn't a chore. Like, it didn't take a lot for me to be like, all right, focus. I need to like work. Like, I loved it. And so it wasn't so difficult to show up, to get the job done, to go above and beyond, because I loved doing what I was doing. But after a while, you do get burnt out, and you just get tired.
It's discouraging.
Yes, and it makes you feel like it's going to be like that wherever you go. And that's not true. That isn't true, but it's hard to get past that. It's so scary to think, okay, well, I've given this place of employment this much time of my life. Now I either stay and deal with it, or finally look for a new place to work and hope that it's not the same, or go through this all over again.
Right.
And I just don't feel like men go through the same thing.
No, I don't think they have it. Even if they don't want to admit it, they have it a little bit easier than we do.
Yeah.
They don't have to work as hard to get there, and they don't have to work as hard to stay there. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like they walk through the door and they've been given one of the best positions. I've seen it. Like, I've literally seen it. They get hired and they're given one of the better positions, or they create a position for these men, and usually they're white men. And you just sit there and think, you've got so many employees here who have proven to you that they are capable. They are still here. They show up every day. Nobody's perfect.
no.
Of course, they're gonna, people get sick, and it's hard to show up
Right. It's just
all the time.
Yeah.
But it's like, how dare you do that. Like, you have so many capable people already working for you, and it's just
To not hire within, to not give people opportunities that have clearly worked for them and deserve them.
exactly.
Just because they're women, or just because they're Hispanic, or just because,
Exactly. You have to, I've seen it so many times, you have to tell them over and over again, let me prove myself to you. Give me the opportunity. Otherwise, how the heck are you going to know what I'm capable of?
Right.
It's crazy to me, and I feel for every woman that has to deal with that on a daily basis. And if you ever do have that opportunity, and you're moving up in your career, don't let these men make you feel like they handed you that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
No, you worked your ass off to get to where you are.
Yes.
And keep working, and don't let them make you feel like you're there because of them. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. Like, it's hard. It's hard to not feel that way. For a long time, I felt, I'm only in this position because they allowed me to be here. No, I put myself through college. I got my degree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working my butt off to prove that I'm capable. So, no, it wasn't just handed to me.
No, you fought for the opportunity.
Exactly.
You kicked ass when you got the opportunity, and then
Exactly.
you continue to fight to stay there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say, I think it does depend on the field that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for other fields, but I know that banking is very competitive, and it's mainly men. They hold the higher positions, and there's not a lot of representation for women, much less Latinas. But and I know that there are other fields out there that might be easier,
Mm-hmm.
but
when you love something, you love something.
Yeah.
You just want to keep doing it until you don't, and that's okay. It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah, because you've changed your mind about, what you've wanted to do, and you don't feel like you've made a mistake. And
no, it's time. It's not time wasted, because I've been learning and I've been growing, and I hope that one day, whenever I finish and I have a career and I'm working, that it'll be good. And if I decide to like I know that it's also harder for women, because we are women, and there's these gender roles that we have to play, of like being a mother, being a wife. How do you feel about that? Like, I know that we're about the same age, and I'm, the clock is ticking, and I'm constantly reminded of that, from, family members and other people my age who have children, and they don't mean anything negative by it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like genuine excitement, like, oh, when are you gonna have a baby? But it's, I don't know. I feel weird about it.
do you feel like that puts like
A
pressure on you?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it does put a pressure on me. And then sometimes, because I'm a little later in life, I'm going to school and stuff, I don't feel my age sometimes, but I'm reminded of it. And I do feel a pressure to have children, to get married, to...
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because we have a similar situation where, we're both, I'm almost 30, so we're both about the same age. We're only several months,
something like
that. I think we're only
like a half year apart or something.
Something like that. And we're both in relationships, in healthy, good relationships, but we're also both like, I don't know. I don't
know. I want it to happen. I think that I would enjoy being a parent at some point in my life. But childbirth scares me. I don't know how you feel about childbirth, but it terrifies me.
Yeah. I don't think I've given it enough thought, if I'm being honest. just getting, for me, just getting past the period of where I know that my pregnancy is a good pregnancy and it's healthy, because I've had a miscarriage in my life, and so I'm so focused on, am I going to be able to get past those 8 weeks, those 10 weeks, that like my mind just doesn't
think about the finish line, like when you get there.
Yeah, like I can't think that far because I'm so stuck on,
because of the experience that you've had.
And for us, it's like we are barely figuring out what we want to do with our careers. You decided to continue your education, and so do you ever feel like, okay, so now, in a year and a half I'm done,
now
but
it's
then
time for baby.
Yeah, like in a year and a half you'll be 31, almost 32. So then, like, do you ever think, okay, well, I'm gonna have a baby and I just got into this career, is that gonna put a pause on my career? Am I gonna have to start over? Like,
right, it is a very scary thought, and I think about that probably way too often. But yeah, I always feel like having, in my eyes, and this isn't probably the case, but in my eyes, I think that having a child just completely changes your life, like in every single aspect. It changes your relationships with other people. It changes your relationship with your partner, with your family. It changes your relationship with your career, with your friends. And I just don't know that I'm ready for that change, because I feel like I'm in such a good place right now, socially, and just like in terms of like a new timeline that I put together for myself. I feel like having a child would not necessarily ruin that. If it were to happen, obviously I would welcome it with joy.
yeah.
But I want some more time, and I know that biologically I don't know how much time I do have. I gave myself a deadline of like 33 for a child, but Mom, if you're listening, it's no promises. We'll see. I don't know. Jordan really wants to be a dad.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to be an old dad.
Yeah.
And I always feel like, as a woman, I feel like, am I making choices that are going to lead him to maybe have some kind of resentment towards me later in life? It's a hard thought.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't just think about yourself.
Yes.
And a lot of people do think, well, I'm the one that's giving birth, like it's up to me. Like, yeah, I'm all for, like, don't force me to have a child, but like, you made a commitment to your partner. Like, you have to consider how they feel and what they want, because it's not all about us.
Yeah.
We have a partner that we care about. So, since we care about them, we love them, and we want to know what they want, and it's difficult.
It is. And that's why, like, communication is just so important. Like, me and Jordan, we revisit this topic of children, I don't know, every few months.
Yeah.
At least twice a year. Just to make sure that we're on the same track, because I don't know. I would never want to make him feel like he's wasted years of his life, or like he wishes that something had been different. So it's just something that we always talk about. But along with the fact of just like childbirth and your life just completely changing when you have children, there's also the thought in my head, at least, that I don't want my child to experience some of the things that I have as a woman, as a Latina. Like, I'm terrified for them. Because there's, like we said, it takes me and you talking about this now. Like, I've never spoken to those like about the racist situations or whatever, to anyone really, because like I said, I feel like they're trivial and not really important. But if I were to have a child, like, would they also feel like that same type of feelings?
Yeah.
And it's scary for me, because I wouldn't want them to feel like I felt, to feel like discouraged or like undeserving, and I know that it's natural, like all of those things are going to happen, but I don't want it to happen.
Yeah, it's hard. It's kind of like the way that our parents thought, they definitely didn't want us going through the struggles that they went through. And, that's why your parents are like, hello, you've got classes, get up, go, because like they know that they don't want us to repeat their mistakes or to go through their struggles, because they didn't have the opportunities that we had. And they did the best that they could, but we still struggled, and we still had difficult times, and sometimes we felt alone. So then now we're like, well, if I have a kid, I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. And
you want more for them. You want them to have opportunity. You don't want them to have to fight all of the time.
Exactly.
For the opportunities, and then fight once they get there, and then just fight to stay there. And like, you just want better for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't change who you are, and if you birth a child, you cannot change things about them. And as much as you would want to make it easier for them, sometimes you're just not going to be able to.
Yeah, and you just have to
do your best to teach them
everything you learned along the way, and how you dealt or how you handled things.
Right, and that it's okay to feel the way that you feel, but don't let that stop you.
Yeah. It's so hard. Like it's so much going on, and sometimes you feel like a lifetime just isn't enough to figure it all out. And by the time you probably do figure it out, you're on your way out. So it's difficult to make a decision, because it's an irreversible one. And you've set your mind, on this is what I want to do for my career, but then clock's ticking, time doesn't stop for anyone. So you have to then say, okay, well, after I finally get that degree that I worked my off for, do I start a family? And is that going to put a pause on my career, because I can't dedicate my time to my career, because I have to dedicate my time to my family, to my children? Am I going to be able to be away from my children? All these things play into the decision of what career do I want, and how long is it going to take for me to get there? But, no decision is the wrong decision. It's about what you want. It's about what you feel is right for you. And, don't let anybody tell you otherwise, make you feel like you're making the wrong decision.
Right. You're on your own timeline. You're on your own path. And people will have their opinions all of the time.
Exactly. So if you're considering going back to college, no matter the age, right? You could be 24, you could be 18, you could be 45, 50, like it doesn't matter.
Right. It could be your first degree. It could be your fifth degree.
Exactly. Because some people enjoy.
They love it.
They love school. They love learning. And,
more power to you.
Yeah. Please notice that I'm saying they and not we.
It's been a real struggle for this one.
But yeah, and I know that you'd agree, like, go for it. If that's what you want to do, it's not going to be easy. It's a lot of long hours, late nights. It can be expensive. It definitely is an investment, but if you know that that's something that you want, then do it. Right?
Agreed. Yeah. I would definitely say, if I could say anything to y'all, it would be to just, do it. Amy said, just do it. Just, like Nike said, just do it. Do whatever you feel is right in your heart. I mean, take into account if you have a partner, if you have close friends, whatever. Take into account what they may be feeling, but at the end of the day, it's about what you want, about what you think is going to be right for your life and the timeline that you have for yourself. And things change, and maybe you wake up tomorrow and change your mind and decide you want to do a whole different life path, and that's okay. But you do just keep trying, don't get discouraged. The troubles are always going to be there.
Yeah.
It's just about how you handle them and continue to push forward.
Yeah, don't give up the moment that things get difficult, because you could realize that that obstacle wasn't so difficult to get over. You just have to do it in order to find out. Nothing in life worthwhile is easy.
Right. Like, take for example, this podcast.
Yeah.
I was terrified to be Amy's first guest. But now that we've done it, I feel a lot better. And I'm like, what was I even worried about? It was not that serious. Like, I'm sorry if I misspoke or something, but but I hope that I did okay. And I feel like we were just having one of our little coffee shop chats.
Yeah, it feels so natural. Yes. And I know that for me, it's going to get a little more difficult, but the leap for me to get here and to be like, just try it. You're not going to know unless you try.
Right.
It was so difficult, but like,
and I've seen it. I saw when you first thought about the idea and then to now, and how you knew that it was something that you wanted to do and you were going to make it happen. And like, here we are, and here you are, and you're doing it.
Exactly.
And I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
And inspiration, really.
Thank you. It's all within yourself, and you have to fight against your self-doubt, and it may not work out. And like, I know that that's a possibility, but I can at least say, well, I gave it a shot, and
you enjoyed it, and
I enjoyed it while I was doing it. And I don't mean like it didn't work out, I didn't make it big like all these other podcasters. No, because for me, it's because I've always wanted to sit down with other women like myself and talk about our lives, and to have that opportunity is what I wanted. And I'm not interested in this becoming a monetary thing. If it does, it's a nice perk,
right?
But this is like a hobby for me. I'm not making any money. It's it's an investment. It's money coming out of my own pockets, and I'm okay with that because I wanted to do it, and I'm enjoying it so far. But I'm still learning.
Yeah.
It's a whole learning experience. But with my boyfriend and my family, and you and all of our friends supporting me and cheering me on, it feels good. And so just know that you won't know until unless you try.
Right.
And so that's the biggest lesson for me with this podcast is I'm giving it a shot, and I'm having fun while I'm doing it.
Right. And you have a great support group, and other women are going to hear what you're talking about and not feel alone.
Exactly. That's what I want. I want other Latina women to know that they're not alone, and we're all struggling with the same things, and we're all cheering each other on, and we're all working hard. And we're trying, and we're getting up every morning or every night. If for those of us that work, overnight and stuff, we're getting up, we're getting out of bed, and we're getting it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's good to know that there's so many of us out there going through the same things, because you don't feel so alone anymore.
And you don't know until you talk about it.
Exactly. So. Exactly. It's been so fun, And, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And
I'm excited for your next guest, somebody else to be here.
yeah.
To listen and to maybe learn some things from them and, learn about their experiences.
Yeah, there's so much in store and so many topics that we're gonna get to discuss, and we've all experienced so many different things that there's so many stories, and there's gonna be times where we joke and laugh and have a good time, and times where we'll get serious and be like,
tears. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready, but I'm ready.
Yeah, because the most difficult thing is the real struggles that broke us down,
Right.
and I want to be able to talk about those things. And I know that there's going to be those really difficult topics, but like I said, we're very similar in so many ways, and we're going through a lot of the same things that I know that it's stuff that we need to talk about.
Right.
Somebody needs to talk about it.
And I thank you for just opening up the space for us to be vulnerable, because we don't get that a lot.
Yeah, no, we don't. Which reminds me, I'd love to start an advice column for my viewers and my listeners, and a way for you to submit any questions, any concerns. You're looking for advice, and you want to know, what do I do, or I'm feeling alone and I need advice. I'd love to start an advice column for the show. If you have anything that you're struggling with, that you just need a friend for, and you'd love for me to share your story on the podcast, you can send those over to my email, charlemosjuntas@gmail.com. I'll include everything in the description, but maybe Mimi, I'll have you back on, and we'll read some of these stories, and other women like ourselves looking for advice or friends to talk to, and we can discuss all this stuff on the podcast. But also, if you have just a story, that you want us to talk about on the show, I'd be, more than honored to share your story. Mimi, I'd love to have you back. There's so many other things that we could talk about.
Oh, we could talk for hours.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely, but
we won't today.
We won't. We're gonna cut it short. Thank you so much for being
for
here.
having me.
We'll get together again soon.
Yes.
And thank you to my listeners and everyone watching me on YouTube. If you've made it this far, I just want to thank you for being here and for supporting me. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and my podcast. I am on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and I'm also on social media, so you can find me on there, Charlemos Juntas podcast, or just Charlemos Juntas. I'll link everything below. But thank you so much for being here. Hasta la próxima.